everyone. Thank you so much for coming along today. We are here to celebrate the publication of Greenwild by Pari Thomson, who's here as well. And I'm A. Steadman, the author of Scandar. And thank you so much, Barnes & Noble, for hosting this launch, which is so exciting because I love Greenwild. And so when they asked me to talk to Pari about it, I was ridiculously excited and said yes in about 2 seconds. So what we're going to do is we are going to have a chat for about 30 minutes about the book. I'm going to ask Pari lots of questions about it, so you get to know about the amazing Greenwild as well. And during that time, if you have a question, could you put it in the Q&A box, and then I'll take a look at those and start asking your questions about 30 minutes in. So Pari, here we are, US Publication Day. Could you tell us a little bit about Greenwild for those of us who might not have read it yet?
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah, first of all, I just want to say thank you for Barnes & Noble for hosting this event. It's incredibly exciting, and thank you so much, Annabelle, for doing the event with me. It's so exciting because I think, like everyone in this room, I'm an enormous fan of your books, so it's just very, very thrilling to be here on the day that the book publishes, so thank you. So in answer to your question, a little bit about Greenwild. It is the first in a middle grade fantasy trilogy. It is about an 11-year-old girl called Daisy Thistledown, whose glamorous journalist mother goes missing in the heart of the Amazon rainforest. And Daisy, who has been temporarily deposited at a horrible boarding school, knows that it's up to her to escape and find her missing mother. And in the process, with the help of a very small and grumpy cat called Napoleon, Daisy finds her way through a hidden door into a secret magical world called the Greenwild, where plant magic is real and which might just hold the secret of what has happened to Daisy's mother. So that's the story in a nutshell.
Amazing. That was, I mean, I read it quite a while ago now, so I think just that introduction makes me want to read it all over again. So you mentioned the magical door. So in this world, it's a door in a real place in London, Kew Gardens. And I wanted to ask you about why you chose to write a portal fantasy, kind of going from our world into a different one.
Yeah, that's such a good question. And actually, I'm not sure it's something that I did consciously, but I think kind of looking back on it and remembering the books that I loved as a child, including, of course, kind of classics like The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. I think what I loved was that sense that, you know, magic could be all around you if you just knew the right place to look, if you just knew the right wardrobe to step through, the right door to discover. And I think that sense that magic is kind of accessible to anyone. You could just be an ordinary person. And it could be right there for you. It's just something that I found incredibly exciting when I was small.
Yeah, because I mean, something that I really loved about the book was that it was a real place that you could potentially go to if you were visiting the UK, and also there's this kind of link with the details of our world and their world. In particular, I was thinking about the parakeets. We have those that fly around the parks, and I saw one, you know, the day that I started reading it, and it really brings that magic alive. So yeah, I thought that was amazing. I wanted to also ask you why you chose Kew Gardens as a place, and you may not be familiar with Kew Gardens if you're in the US, but I was interested to know why that place and share that with us.
Yeah, so yes, as you say, Kew Gardens is a real place. It exists in West London. It is one of the biggest botanical gardens in the world, and it's also one of the most biodiverse places on Earth, which is a pretty astonishing thing to think about because it is packed with so many incredible plant species. And I think one of the reasons is that I'm lucky enough to live close by it. So I spent a lot of time wandering around it and kind of thinking about all the amazing plants there and thinking that some of them really are stranger than fiction. You kind of couldn't make them up. There are like tiny hairy pink bananas that are like this big, and then there are giant lily pads that are big enough for a like full-grown person to lie down on, and there are carnivorous plants that eat things, and that is just so astonishing. And I think it's that sense that nature kind of is a little bit magic, that I kind of really wanted to explore and kind of run with in the book. So it kind of, when I was thinking about where the door into the Greenwild would be, it kind of made perfect sense for it to be at Kew Gardens.
Well, as Pari already knows, I actually went there with another author friend of mine after we both read Greenwild. So that is the effect you had on us. But we went to actually see if the door was there. And that's one of the reasons I think the book is so brilliant, because it really brought out that sense of like, maybe it could be real. I mean, I literally checked the place. Like that's how magical it is. So which came first for you? Was it the world itself, the Greenwild, or was it the characters that for you, or was it both? I mean, this doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think thinking back, the very first scene I wrote was the scene where Daisy steps through the door into the Greenwild. So it was almost the two things together. It was the character of Daisy, and it was this kind of magical place where, green magic, plant magic is real. And then kind of everything kind of grew out from there, the kind of details of the world, and then all the other characters and the people Daisy meets in the Greenwild. But I think, yeah, at the heart of it, it was this girl Daisy, her cat, and this idea of a magical world which you might just be able to find if you looked in the right place.
Yeah, let's talk about Daisy a bit more. So she's the main character. For those of you who are gonna hopefully get it and read it pretty soon, where did she come from for you? So she was in that first scene that you wrote, but as you wrote her, did you kind of recognize her at all? Can you tell us a bit about her and what she's like?
Yeah, so she is the daughter of this very intrepid and sort of glamorous journalist. And so her mother kind of spends all her time going from one country to another, one story to another. And Daisy kind of goes with her. So Daisy's grown up in quite a sort of nomadic, kind of cosmopolitan way, kind of traveling around, meeting lots of people, seeing lots of places, but never really having a home, never really knowing what home looks like. So I think that was kind of a key part of who she is and what her journey is kind of working out, where she belongs and kind of what it means to belong to a place or a group of people. And I think some of that comes from my own childhood. I am the daughter of a diplomatic family. So we used to move every 2 or 3 years. So not as often as Daisy, but still quite often. And Daisy is also like me, half Persian. So we both have Iranian mothers. And so that was kind of something quite key that I wanted to explore in her. But we're also totally different. Daisy's much braver than I am or ever was at that age. She's much more determined. And I think she has a real streak of kind of quiet determination. And she decides to do something, she's going to do it. So I really enjoyed kind of writing that and kind of, creating a character who's much cooler than I am.
I think one of the things I really like, I think she feels really realistic, because she is really brave, but she also voices a lot of her worries and like anxieties about the things she's going to do. And so, and I really like that, because sometimes characters don't feel like you could be them really, because you just think, oh well, she's ridiculously brave, and like, you know, that's the kind of person that should go on adventures, you know, off you go. But I think with Daisy, I was kind of, I would sort of be worrying about something in my head about what she was about to do, like some scheme that she's come up with, but she would also be voicing those worries. And I thought that was really, really great, because I think children will really be able to like see themselves in her, and hopefully kind of find their inner bravery as well. But it's not just Daisy. There's lots of other amazing characters in Greenwild. And I was wondering if you could tell us about a couple of your favorite ones to write. I mean, you could tell us about your least favorite one to write if you want, but yeah, who did you really enjoy writing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there are always those characters that you love to hate. And for me, the key one is Matron, who is the kind of really sinister figure at Daisy's boarding school, who she has to escape from. And she's just she's kind of, at least to me, as I was writing, I was like, oh, I'm properly scared of this lady. She's, you know. So I think that was quite sort of fun and interesting to write in a way, kind of making a character that kind of gives you a bit of a shiver down your spine. And then I guess on the other end of the spectrum, I really loved writing. So when Daisy gets to Mallow Marsh, she makes some friends who are her own age. So there's a boy called Indigo who can talk to animals. There's a girl called the professor, and she's called that because she's basically a child genius and she speaks about 15 different languages. And then there's a girl called Acorn, who is a bit younger than the rest of them, and seems quite quiet at first glance, but actually kind of turns out to, at the end of the book, to be the bravest of all of them. And I loved writing that kind of group of friends for Daisy, and I think that sense of her kind of discovering a found family with these kids who call themselves the 5 o'clock club, because they meet at 5 o'clock every day to exchange news and snacks.
So I want to be part of that club. It's so good. It's so good. So I mean, one of my favorite characters, which might be to be expected because lots of my characters are unicorns, I don't know, not human, is Napoleon, who is Daisy's cat. And I love this cat from the very beginning, partly because I love cats, but also because it was, I think, described as so small and so fierce, and kind of, I think Daisy sort of like tolerates it for a little bit, rather than, whereas they build their relationship. But they sort of, why did you decide to write Daisy a kind of cat companion character? Did Daisy come with the cat to start with, or did the cat come afterwards?
I think the cat was there from a really early stage, and I think possibly it's because I spent most of my childhood longing for a cat, because my family moved around so often we couldn't have pets. So I was one of those children who just longed for a proper pet, like, you know, something that was my very own. And I think that I also just love how grumpy Napoleon is. He's kind of not really interested in pleasing other people, and I love that kind of slightly independent streak in him. Actually, there's a photo of me on my desk, which I don't know, you might not be able to see it. This is me about age 6. That's me and a cat that I adopted for the summer. We went to stay with my family in Iran, and that's the cat who was hanging around the garden that summer, and I was in love with him. So yeah, I think when I was thinking of, you know, would Daisy have a sidekick, you know, it was just the obvious thing. Yeah.
Well, you can actually see Napoleon on the cover as well, can't you? Because it's on Daisy's shoulder, which I was very pleased to spot after, because I had a UK proof copy, so I didn't have the real cover, and then I was like, there he is. So okay, so I think we should talk a little bit about the magic in this book, because it's awesome. And I was wondering if you could give us like a very quick introduction to the sort of magic system that exists in your world.
Yeah. So it's a world, like I said, where plants are magic, and there are all sorts of amazing things that you might encounter. So there are lily pad boats that you can step onto and sail across a lake on. There is magical minim moss, and if you eat a square of it, it will shrink you to the height of your thumb. There are seeds which can turn you invisible. There are, you know, all sorts of things, and plants kind of have a kind of agency, and they need to be kind of treated with the proper respect. But, you know, a good botanist, the Greenwild is full of people who can do green magic, and they call themselves botanists. So a good botanist who is well trained knows how to kind of control plants and kind of use them in the most useful way. So you might, for example, be able to control vines and get them to help you with useful things like, you know, tying up baddies, or helping you put the washing up away after dinner, those kind of things. So I think the feeling that I wanted to create was just a sense of a world that's kind of where plants are just kind of alive and totally part of the way of life.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely comes across. I think it's you know, I like that sense that they are kind of their own thing as well. They're not going to just serve the botanists. Like, there's an edge, there's a danger to lots of them. You know, there are plants which you have to like completely avoid, or there'll be kind of certain death. Like, I love that, because also it reflects the natural world as well, which is such a brilliant aspect to it all. And I think we've got Greenwild, which is kind of like the world, and then there's the Mallarmarsh, which is the map that you can see in the book. And so I've picked some things out that you can see on the map of the book, which I particularly enjoyed in Greenwild. So we're just going to have a little chat about that now, so that you can get a sense of kind of the magic of the world that Pari has created. So I've got three things. The first one is the roost, which I am a big fan of because it is a tree house, and there are many tree houses in the Scandar series. Basically everyone lives in them. So when I read about this tree house, I was very excited, and I was wondering whether you could tell us a bit about the roost and why you decided to include this one.
Yeah, so Mallarmarsh is a pocket of the Greenwild, and there are kind of many different pockets of the Greenwild in all the different countries around the world. And yes, as you say, Mallarmarsh has this place called the Roost in it, and it is essentially an enormous tree house that is kind of perched in a tree and kind of almost woven out of the tree with the kind of walls and beams made from the leaves and branches. And it is the home of a character called Artemis White, who is the commander of Mallarmarsh. So she's kind of the head of it. And she basically lets Daisy stay with her there when Daisy arrives, and kind of asks the people of Mallarmarsh for help in trying to find out what happened to her mother. And I think what I love about the Roost is that it's this sense that it's a safe place for Daisy. And for a girl who's never had a home, it is an incredibly kind of homely and comforting place. There's a housekeeper called Miss Tufton, who's kind of quite bad-tempered, but you know, makes these amazing comforting meals. I think something that I loved as a child in books was amazing food and food descriptions. So that was something that I really wanted Daisy to have, that experience of you know, home and good food and comfort, and, you know, a place that is safe and a place that's yours. So yeah, that kind of treehouse represents that for Daisy in the book.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly wanted to go there for sure, and when you will read it, you will have well. And yeah, I love the character of Miss Tufton as well. Talking about food brings me on to one of the next things in Mallow Marsh, which is great, which is it's called a milk chocolate tree. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Can you just tell us a bit about that, because I am obsessed with it.
So the 5 o'clock club that I was telling you about earlier, they have a little kind of rundown shed that they like to meet in every day at 5 o'clock. And inside the shed is a milk chocolate tree, and this tree grows pure milk chocolate. And the great thing about it is that no matter how much chocolate you pluck from the branches, it keeps growing back. You just have to keep watering it with milk, and the more milk you water it with, the lighter the milk chocolate grows. So depending on your taste preference. And I loved writing this because it was such a pure wish fulfillment thing for me. It's just kind of what I wish existed in my own life.
So good. So good. Again, I just want them. There's so many things in Greenwild that I want, and I really want to have them, and I'm kind of annoyed that it isn't real now. Well, is it? Who knows? Maybe it is. Maybe I just couldn't find that door in Kew Gardens. So yeah, so the last one, I mean, there are many parts of this book that are truly incredible from an imagination perspective, but one of the ones I like the most is the heart oak, which I love the idea of a kind of a central tree, I suppose. And I was wondering if you could tell everyone a bit about that idea of the heart oak.
Yeah, so the heart oak is a enormous magical tree on the edge of the lake at Mallow Marsh, and like you said, it's kind of the center of the whole place, and kind of where the magic of the place is rooted, if you excuse the pun. But it's kind of a place, almost a bit like how some people would think of a church. It's a place where Greenwilders would kind of stand under it to get married, or if they needed to make a wish, they would tie a ribbon to its branches. And it's kind of that idea of a place where the magic is kind of really concentrated. And if Mallow Marsh is kind of in danger or something terrible is happening, you might just see the heart oak kind of starting to suffer. Like its branches might start looking, a bit less happy, or leaves might start falling off it. So I kind of love that idea of a tree that was kind of totally kind of hooked into the well-being of a place.
Yeah, it's really beautiful, and yeah, no spoilers, but it plays a role. And so I was just going to ask you a more general question about, because there is the world building in it is incredible, and I was wondering what kind of helps you have ideas for when you're world building. Is there anything you do? Is there anywhere you go? Is there anywhere you read? Anything you read in particular? What fuels that imagination?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I definitely like going on lots of long walks. I think that if I'm ever stuck for ideas, I go on long walks and kind of daydream, and especially if there are if it's a place like Kew, even better. You can just look at bizarre plants and feel inspired. And yeah, I don't know, what do you do when you're kind of looking for inspiration?
I think being outside really helps. I think that I listen to music quite a lot as well, kind of any kind, because sometimes just like a lyric in a song, or kind of an idea, even like no lyrics, that sometimes helps. I think it helps me get into a place where like you say, like my imagination can kind of like sort of roam a little bit, kind of, yeah, just like almost like dream state, I suppose, but and shutting out everything else kind of helps with that, I think. But yeah, and sometimes taking a break, which I know sounds like we're cheating, but really it's work.
It's
But so I've got a couple of questions in the chat which I'm going to ask, the Q&A, sorry, that I'm going to ask. But if you've got one, we're going to keep talking, so just pop one in there, and we'll keep going, and I'll ask them as they come in. So I've got a question, which is a great question. It says, this book is dubbed A Wrinkle in Time meets The Secret Garden. Was either of those your favorite book as a child? And which were your favorite books when you were growing up?
Ooh, yeah, that is a great question. So I was a terrible bookworm as a child. My parents had to bribe me to come down to dinner and put my book away. And so I read a lot, and there were so many books that I loved. I actually did love both of those books. A Wrinkle in Time is kind of such a strange and magical book. And I love the character of Meg, who's kind of a sort of unlikely heroine, but you kind of really root for her all the way. And actually, I would say something similar about The Secret Garden. I think Mary Lennox in The Secret Garden is she's kind of quite spiky and kind of unpleasant and unhappy at the start of the book. And I think what I love is actually it's that sense of her finding the place where she belongs and finding her home at Misselthwaite Manor. My memory of this book, I have perfect recall because I read it so many times. And you know, also that sense that, you know, nature can be deeply healing and comforting, and kind of, yeah, the sort of magic of kind of growing something and seeing it grow and taking care of something, and how that can actually kind of translate into taking care of yourself. So yeah, I love that about that book. But yes, I had many other favorite books, including The Chronicles of Narnia, including His Dark Materials, including anything by Eva Ibbotson. I absolutely loved a book called Journey to the River Sea, which I think also kind of gave me a real lifelong fascination with the Amazon, because it's about a girl called Maya who gets sent to live with some relatives on the Amazon River in Brazil. But yes, I could go on and on and on about this. I have so many favorite childhood books.
Do you think why do you think that because you love those books so much, do you think that's why you wanted to write for this age group, this middle grade age?
Yeah, again, I'm not sure it was kind of an intentional decision to write for this age group, but I think kind of thinking back on it, I think these were the books sort of between the ages of about 8 and 12. Those were the books that really got under my skin and that have really stayed with me for the rest of my life. And I think, yeah, and so naturally when I started writing, it kind of makes sense that was kind of the place that I went back to.
Yeah. So another question from the Q&A. Thank you for putting some in. We've got one from Angela, who asks, did you love plants as a child? And someone else has also asked, what is your favorite plant? So let's do the plant questions together.
Excellent questions. I did love plants as a child. I remember my parents being posted in India when I was quite small, and they had an amazing garden there. And I remember, you know, it's that thing when you're really small that everything else seems really big. But I remember kind of crawling into, it must have been like probably like an ordinary sized like flower patch, but just kind of being lost in it and like feeling like the flowers and the plants were like so far above me, and that kind of sense of kind of just being lost in surrounded by plants was amazing. And when I was a bit older, my dad used to take me to the garden centre at the weekend and we would pick out flowers. I was a bit obsessed with pansies at one point. We planted a lot of pansies together.
That's really good.
Yeah. So yes, I did really enjoy, I love plants as a child. I'm not sure that I have a favorite plant now, because I think it's kind of, it is that thing of, it's whatever's in season is what you love most, whatever's kind of around and most beautiful right now. So I guess, you know, right now it's all of the roses that are coming out. It's you know, the like giant peonies that are just so extravagant. Yeah, it's a lovely time in the UK. Lots of beautiful plants out.
Yeah, no, it's I've just come back after being away suddenly, and suddenly everything has just gone into bloom, and it smells lovely everywhere, and I'm like, oh, when did this happen? But so Angela has also asked, what's your favorite part of the book, which I know is a tricky question, but do you have a favorite part? A non-spoilery part?
Yes, that's what I was just thinking. I could tell you about one of my favorite parts, but that might give away a big part of the story. I think I really enjoyed the parts where kind of Daisy is discovering kind of her own abilities in the Greenwild, and she is kind of forced to join some of the other kids at Mallow Marsh and trying to, you know, learn green magic. And she's terrible at it to start with, and I really enjoyed writing those scenes where she is just really struggling, and it's kind of quite funny for, you know, it's not really funny for her, but I think it's quite funny for the reader and for some of the people around her. So I
think she deals with it quite well. You know, I think that's the nice part of her personality, because she's just kind of like, oh well, this isn't going well, but you know, and that, yeah, I think it's not so awful that it's kind of horrible to watch in a way. Like, you kind of know she's going to be all right because she's got this kind of inner strength. But yeah, there are some funny scenes in there.
Yeah.
So this is a question from Roslyn, who says, were any teachers very influential for you in your childhood, or did you move too often to have strong relationships with teachers?
Oh, that is a great question. So actually, when I was 11, I was sent to a boarding school like Daisy. So after that age, I actually had kind of fairly consistent teaching. And even though I hated boarding school, and I spent a lot of the time devising escape plans, I did have one or two teachers who made the whole experience much more bearable. And actually, I remember I had a wonderful English teacher called Mrs. Addison, who used to teach us things that weren't on the syllabus, and she always made it this sort of big secret. She was like, you know, shh, you know, don't tell anyone, we're kind of being very naughty and we're doing this poem that's not on the syllabus. And I love that sense of like, you know, oh my goodness, you know, these books are kind of forbidden and exciting. And I think that kind of played a big part in kind of making me love, books and poetry.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry that you had a horrible time at boarding school, but I'm also glad that something good came out of it. All right. So we've got another question that is, you have a unique perspective as a debut author, as you're an editorial director at Bloomsbury Children's. How has working publishing prepared you for your debut? Did you feel prepared?
Yeah, in some ways it was helpful in that I knew a little bit about kind of how the publishing process works. In some ways, no, I was not prepared at all. And I think that's just because it feels so different coming at it from the other side, and kind of being on the other side of receiving edits, for example. And it's given me a whole new insight into what my authors must feel, and a kind of whole new level of sympathy for them. So that's been great. And the other thing is, I edit picture books. So the books I work on are kind of really visual and highly illustrated. So it's kind of almost a different world from writing middle grade.
Okay, I'm gonna segue there into a question about the illustrations, because they're really beautiful, by Elisa Paganelli. How did you find the experience of someone illustrating your work, kind of bringing your vision to life, because it's so full of kind of new things and your creativity? How did it feel like to see it? And do you like them? And
Yeah, I think I must be the luckiest author in the world. Elisa's totally incredible, and you know, the illustrations that she's created are so amazing. So let me just see if I'm just flicking through my book and seeing if there's one that I can find and show. Oh, here we go. Here are the members of the 5 o'clock club. That is Indigo, and that is the prof, and that's Acorn. But yes, it's completely magical to see, you know, something that you kind of made up in your head being translated onto the page like that. And you know, I never expected the book to be published, let alone illustrated. So it's totally wonderful. And Elisa, I think, just totally got from the start what the book was about, and I think she is also kind of obsessed with nature and really inspired by plants. So I think she just immediately wanted to do it, and I just feel really lucky that she said yes.
oh yeah, they're so beautiful, and as is the map. Now we both have maps in our books.
Yes.
And I was wondering what your experience was of creating the map, and whether it was the same as mine. So what happened with creating your map?
So Macmillan asked me if I could draw a kind of initial version of the map, so that Elisa could, you know, translate it. So I had to take a sheet of paper, and I'm terrible at drawing, by the way. I'll just sort of be like, so this glass house is here, and this tree, which looks like a cauliflower, is here. And somehow Elisa took this complete mess and turned it into this completely beautiful map that looks like this, which is so stunning. So she is an artistic genius. But
that is exactly what happened to me as well. I'm terrible at drawing, and I discovered I could not draw anything. Trees, nothing. They just ended up like circles, and then they made it really, really beautiful. But yeah, it's lovely to be able to have that map for Greenwild, I think, as a reference point when you're reading it, because it kind of, I kept looking at it just because I wanted to like really kind of like know where everything was for sure. So yeah, I think it's really well done, because it kind of shows you a little bit what the things look like, as well as kind of just like where things are.
It does. And I think, yeah, it makes me very happy, because I remember when I was a child, if a book had a map in the front of it, I knew it was going to be a good book. And so, yeah, it's basically a dream come true to have a map in the front of mine.
So I'm going to ask this question now from the Q&A, because 2 people have asked the same thing, which I think means this is hopefully going well, is that how many books are there going to be in the series, and when will book 2 come out, which you may not know yet?
Oh, yes. So there are going to be 3 books in the series in total. So 2 more after this one. And book 2 will come out next summer. And I am just about to finish writing the first draft, so I'm really excited. I'm at that stage of being really excited about the story, and excited kind of eventually when it's ready to share it with everyone.
Hooray! Yeah, I'm excited. I want to read the next one. So I wanted to ask you about kind of themes a little bit. And so, as we've kind of, you may have guessed from the way we've been talking about plants in Greenwild, that they're extremely important to our world, that you will recognize, and the world of the Greenwild. And there's also a threat of people trying to kind of destroy the Greenwild. And I was wondering why you wanted to write about that tension and have that as a theme running through it.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, for me, I kind of wrote Greenwild as kind of, you know, partly escapism and partly just kind of a kind of hopefully joyful and comforting thing to read, because that's kind of what I look for in books, is kind of joy and comfort. But you know, I also wrote it as a kind of love letter to the natural world and kind of how beautiful and amazing the world is. So it's kind of a celebration of that, and I think it's almost impossible to write about that without acknowledging that, yes, the natural world, you know, our world is under threat, and you know, it is scary. And I think it's quite hard, you know, for all of us, kids and adults, not to feel a little bit powerless about that, and kind of to kind of be unsure of what we can do about it. So I think I just wanted to write something that was kind of not telling people what to do about it, but just saying, you know, actually there is, you know, there's hope, and there are things we can do, and there are people who are out there who are determined to help and who are determined to kind of change things, and you know, hopefully eat some milk chocolate from a milk chocolate tree while you're at it.
Yeah, I think it definitely feels hopeful, because Daisy is such a proactive kind of character, and she wants to change things, and I think that was something that I really loved about that aspect of it as well. So it wasn't kind of, you know, I don't know, I think it's very positive in its message about it, as well as kind of a call to action. Certainly. Right, I've got some more questions in here. Oh, this is a fun one. Oh, is there a different version of the book for America compared to in the UK?
Ooh,
The different terms and phrases used.
Yeah, so the US and UK editions have slightly different covers, although they are very similar looking. And the text they're almost identical, but you know, one has kind of US spelling versus UK spelling. And yes, the amazing American copy editor did also go through and take out kind of English phrases that US readers might not know. So for example, there are no jumpers in the US edition. There are only sweaters. And what was the other one? Oh yes, I think there's we have a phrase of like tucking into a good meal, or like tucking into a sandwich, whereas I think I was told that is not a thing in the US. So I think the characters in the US version dig into their food instead.
It is interesting doing that, isn't it? The very small differences, but some of them just no idea. And it's probably because we often have very odd turns of phrase on both sides. So I've got one from Rosalind saying, did you learn any of the local languages in the countries where you lived when you were growing up, and would that have an effect on your writing, being bilingual or trilingual, if you did learn those languages?
So I speak Farsi very poorly, not as well as I would like, but well enough to sort of understand and have conversations. And I think that was really important to me in the writing, that kind of texture of the language that Daisy and her mother speak together. You know, the kind of, you know, endearments that you might use speaking to your daughter, for example, kind of were a really important way for me to kind of show that really close relationship between Daisy and her mum. You know, her mum is kind of a single mum who's brought her up by herself, because Daisy's dad died when she was 3. So yeah, that language felt like a really key part of their relationship.
Yeah, no, I love their relationship, and I think it's really I mean, it's actually, thinking about it, I mean, so Skandar is also it's a single parent family with his dad And I think it's important for kind of children to see different kind of family types and different kind of things represented for them, because they have that, you know, they might have that themselves, or they know people at school. And I think it's something that you know, we've both done, which is quite interesting to see, really, and hopefully good for readers to see. What else have we got in here? Oh, this is an interesting one. So did you try various titles for the book and concept, or did the term Greenwild just suddenly come into your head as the perfect name for it?
Ooh, in fact, when I was writing the book, the sort of working title that I had for it was Mallow Marsh, which is the name of the pocket of the Greenwild.
Yeah.
That Daisy spends most of her time in. So in my head, the book was always called Mallow Marsh, and it only became Greenwild a little further down the line. But ever since that kind of clicked into place, it has kind of felt like the perfect title for it. And I kind of feel like, oh, I can't believe it wasn't called that all along.
Yeah, it's funny how that happens, isn't it? But yeah, and I love the idea of the pockets everywhere, because I think that sort of makes everyone feel like they can access it wherever they are, which is a really cool thing, because that doesn't always happen in portal fantasies. You know, there's one specific entrance and you have to go through that wardrobe to get there. But
well, I kind of love the idea of the world being really international, and kind of that you could get into it wherever you're reading the book. There'll be a portal there that you can find. And there is, in fact, I'm not sure if this is in book 1 or whether it's a detail that you will discover in book 2. There is a portal in New York, in the New York Botanical Gardens, into a pocket of the Greenwild called Boulder Dash. Anyone who's listening in from New York, there definitely is a portal into the Greenwild very near you.
Great. Did you hear that, guys? This is great news. You too can go on a search for the real portal. Angela's asked, is there one in New Jersey?
I'm sure there is, yes.
Okay, so I think probably we'll need to start wrapping up soon, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition, which there is, which exists, and there's some extra content in it. Could you tell us what that is, because it's quite exciting?
Yes, so I don't actually have a copy of the Barnes & Noble edition with me yet, but I have seen photos of it and it is very, very beautiful. So it has a special cover underneath the jacket, which is kind of it has kind of like gold foil and a tree on it, which is very, very beautiful. And then it has a special extract from a kind of book of magical botany about different magical plants. So there are, I think, 10 plants in there that you can read as if it's kind of from a real magical plant encyclopedia. So you can read all about the properties of magical pomegranates and seeds that can turn you invisible, and all sorts of exciting details like that. And as well as that, there is also an exclusive short story that you can find only in the Barnes & Noble edition. And it is about a character in the book called Ivy, who Daisy initially doesn't really like very much. She's called Poison Ivy, or that's her nickname, because she's kind of quite mean to everyone. But in this short story, we discover a bit more about her backstory and why she acts how she does. And I really enjoyed writing it. So definitely, if you don't have it already, get a copy of the Barnes & Noble edition to enjoy all of those things.
I need to get myself one, because I need to read that extra content. But yeah, so I think that's all we've got time for. Thank you so much for all your questions. Thank you so much, Pari, for writing an incredible book, which which transported me to an amazing new world. And I'm so happy to find out that there's 2 more to come as well. And so there's going to be some instructions in the chat about where you can find the book if you haven't ordered one already. And you can find all our books, the Scandal series and Greenwild, on Barnes & Noble's website as well, if you want to order there. But thanks everyone. Thank you, Pari. I love talking to you. And yeah,
thank you so much, Annabelle. This has been so great, and thanks everyone for listening.
Bye.
Bye.